Everyone knows the R1, the VMAX, and the FJR, but Yamaha has a secret history of bikes that were ahead of their time. Machines that pushed boundaries, dominated races, or completely rewrote the rulebook, yet somehow slipped through the cracks. In this video, we're counting down 10 Yamaha motorcycles that deserved way more respect. We'll even see Yamaha going totally off the rails with a bike that ditched the front fork and completely changed how motorcycles handle. And by the time we hit number 1, you'll see how Yamaha quietly built one of the best middleweight motorcycles of the last 20 years. And somehow most people still overlook it. So buckle up, because these aren't just bikes, they're stories, innovations, and legends that the world almost forgot. Let's get into it. Number 10, Yamaha TDR250. Let's kick things off with a bike that most of you have probably never heard of, the TDR250. Built from 1988 to 1993, and if you saw one on American soil, consider yourself lucky because they were rarer than honest politicians. This thing was a street-legal trail bike with the heart of a two-stroke sport bike, 249 cubic centimeters of liquid-cooled parallel twin Fury, pumping out 46 horsepower through a 6-speed gearbox. Now, that might not sound like much until you realize this bike weighed about as much as a bicycle with a lunchbox strapped to it. Yamaha equipped it with their YPVS system. That's the power valve technology. Same stuff they were running in their TZR sport bikes. This meant you got broad, usable power instead of that typical two-stroke hit or miss delivery. And they gave it digital CDI timing, which was pretty slick for the late 80s. Here's the thing though, Yamaha built this machine 3 full years before they dropped the TDM 850. 3 years before the adventure bike category really started heating up. The TDR was a pioneer. It could hustle on the street, carve canyon roads, and then you could point it at a fire trail and keep going. But it had issues. The bodywork would crack, corrosion was a problem, the suspension could be lazy, and honestly, the market didn't know what to do with it. This was 1988. People wanted pure sport bikes or pure dirt bikes. The idea of mixing both was just too strange, so it died quietly. Production numbers were tiny. Most ended up in Europe and Japan. And now, good luck finding one. When they do surface, collectors are starting to pay attention because they realize what we all should have known back then. Yamaha was onto something. Number 9, Yamaha XT500. Alright, some of you will absolutely remember this one. Yamaha drops their first 4-stroke enduro bike. Big 499 cubic centimeter air-cooled single. Simple, rugged, built like a tractor but way more fun to ride. This was Yamaha saying, alright, we're done messing around with little two-strokes. Let's build something serious. And serious it was, because in 1979, the very first Paris-Dakar rally happens. You know what won? An XT500, not just one. Yamaha took first and second place. The bikes beat the cars, beat everything. Motorcycles winning overall in the Dakar was unheard of, and Yamaha did it right out of the gate. 1980, they swept the top 4 positions. 11 of the 25 finishers were riding XT500s. This bike was damn near indestructible. Now, this wasn't some highly strung race special. This was a bike you could buy at a dealership, slap some bags on, and ride from California to Mexico without a second thought. It became huge on the West Coast for desert riding. Over in Europe, people were buying them just for the style, riding them on the street like they were cafe racers with knobby tires. So why is it forgotten? Because Yamaha replaced it with the XT600 in 1982, which had 4 valves and more power. Then the XT line kept evolving. Liquid cooling came in, more displacement, more complexity, and the original XT500 just became this relic from the 70s. But here's the truth, without that bike, you don't get the Tenere line. You don't get Yamaha's entire adventure bike legacy. The XT500 laid the foundation for everything that came after. Put some respect on its name. Number 8, Yamaha RD350L CYPVS. Okay, we're into two-stroke territory, and if you were riding in the 80s, you already know where this is going. This bike was Yamaha's answer to everyone who said two-strokes couldn't be civilized. 347 cubic centimeters of parallel twin two-stroke madness, liquid-cooled and equipped with something genuinely revolutionary, the Yamaha power valve system. See, traditional two-strokes had a problem. They either made power up top and nothing down low, or they were doggy everywhere. The YPVS changed that. Computer-controlled valve in the exhaust port that adjusted port height based on revolutions per minute. Low down, you got torque. Up top, you got 53 horsepower screaming at 8,500 revolutions per minute. This thing weighed 320 pounds and would flat out embarrass bikes twice its size. It would outturn them, outbrake them, out-accelerate them, and do it all while costing half as much. Yamaha called it the nearest thing to a road-going racer ever produced. They weren't lying. You could get it fully faired or naked. Monoshock rear suspension. Handling that felt like you were riding on rails. And that sound, that ring-ding two-stroke howl, it was intoxicating. But here's the problem. Emissions regulations. Two-strokes got strangled by the EPA and similar agencies worldwide. The smoke, the oil mixing, the perception that they were dirty, it all added up. By the late 80s, the writing was on the wall. Four-stroke sport bikes were taking over. The RD350LC was the last two-stroke sold in the American market in 1984 as the RZ350. After that, it was done here. They kept building them in other markets for a while. Brazil actually produced them until 1995, but the golden age was over. And that's a shame because this bike had soul. It had character. Modern sport bikes are faster, cleaner, more reliable. But they don't sound like this, and they don't feel like this. The RD350LC was raw, honest, and thrilling in a way that's just gone now. Number 7. Yamaha FZR 400RR. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. 400 cubic centimeters? That's not a real bike. And that's exactly why this machine belongs on this list, because that attitude is dead wrong. 1989 to 1994, Yamaha built a 400 cubic centimeter inline 4 with 16 valves, DOHC, liquid cooling, and a red line at 14,000 revolutions per minute. The thing made 66 horsepower and weighed 352 pounds dry. Do the math on that power to weight ratio. It was absurd, but here's where it gets interesting. Yamaha gave this bike their Delta Box aluminum frame, same design philosophy as their flagship superbike, and then they made it the first motorcycle ever to use low-profile radial tires. This wasn't some junior sport bike. This was a fully realized race replica that just happened to be in the 400 cubic centimeter class, and there was a special version, the RRSP. Only 100 of them imported to the UK for Isle of Man TT racing. These had a close ratio gearbox, upgraded suspension, different cams, bigger valves, and a 15,000 revolutions per minute red line. Quick release rear wheel, each one numbered with a certificate and a special key fob. Magazines at the time said the handling was beyond superlatives. Cycle World called it an instant cult classic. Some reviewers claimed it was better built than Yamaha's OW01 superbike. This was a 400 cubic centimeter 4-cylinder that punched way above its weight. So why don't we talk about it? Because in America, we never got it. The 400 cubic centimeter class was huge in Japan and parts of Europe due to licensing restrictions, but here, nobody cared about 400s. We wanted 600s and 750s and liters. Plus, the Honda CBR 400 overshadowed it. The NC30 and NC35 got all the attention, and the Kawasaki ZX-R 400 was faster in a straight line. So the FZR 400RR became this bike that only the hardcore knew about. Today, the SP models are selling at auction for $13,000 to $14,000 when they surface. People are finally realizing what they missed. But back then, it was just another 400, and that was enough for most people to walk right past it. Number 6, Yamaha TRX 850. Number 6 is a bike that always makes people shake their head. Built from 1995 to 2000, and Yamaha really thought they had something here. Take an 849 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine. But instead of the normal 360-degree crank, give it a 270-degree crank so it fires like a V-twin. That's right, parallel twin architecture with V-twin character. You got that lumpy, soulful exhaust note and the torque characteristics of a V-twin, but with the packaging and simplicity of a parallel twin, then put that engine in a trellis frame. Yeah, like Ducati's signature design. Add a half fairing, clip-on bars, rising rate monoshock, and you've got yourself a factory-built cafe racer that could hang with Ducatis for half the price. 10 valves total, 5 per cylinder, 3 intake, and 2 exhaust. The oil tank sat right on top of the gearbox, integrated into the engine cases. Simplified manufacturing, kept weight low, made the whole package tight and focused. This should have been a hit. Yamaha was targeting the pre-916 Ducatis, and on paper, they nailed it. The TRX was lighter, more reliable, cheaper to maintain, and just as fun to ride on back roads. But it flopped, never officially sold in the United States. Limited markets in Europe and Japan, and even there, it got killed by the competition. Honda dropped the VTR 1000, Suzuki brought out the TL 1000, and Ducati, the 916 absolutely dominated the sport bike conversation. The TRX couldn't get any air. Plus, Yamaha made some weird choices. You couldn't buy it in red in Europe. Red. The color everyone wanted for a sport bike in the 90s. Little things like that added up. So it died quietly. And now it's this cult bike that enthusiasts talk about in hushed tones. If only people had given it a chance. Well, they didn't, and that's why it's on this list. Number 5, Yamaha MT-01. Halfway through and we're hitting number 5. This one is actually exciting. Yamaha took the engine from their Warrior XV 1700 cruiser, 1,670 cubic centimeters of air-cooled V-twin, tuned it, refined it, and stuffed it into a naked muscle bike frame. This thing made 90 horsepower, but that's not the story. The story is the torque, 111 pound-feet, just rolling, throbbing, relentless torque. You twisted the throttle and the MT-01 didn't accelerate so much as it just lunged forward like something waking up angry. But it wasn't a cruiser. It wasn't a sport bike. It was this strange, beautiful muscle bike that sat somewhere in between, and the market had absolutely no idea what to do with it. Yamaha called it the Master of Torque, MT-01. Perfect name. It handled lighter than its 530-pound weight suggested. The frame was solid. The brakes were good. The riding position was upright and comfortable. Everything about it made sense, except the concept. Cruiser guys didn't want it because it wasn't laid back enough. Sport bike guys didn't want it because it wasn't fast enough. Naked bike guys were confused because it had a cruiser engine. Nobody knew where to put it, and Yamaha didn't help. Marketing was minimal. Distribution was limited. If you wanted one in the States, good luck finding a dealer that even knew it existed. But here's the thing. Yamaha was right. They were just early. 5-10 years later, this exact concept, big torque, upright muscle bike, became the formula everyone copied. Ducati's Diavel, Triumph's Rocket 3, even Harley's getting into it now. Number 4, Yamaha XT600Z/XT660Z Tenere. Number 4 takes us back to the dirt. Both the original XT600Z and the later XT660Z deserve spots here, so we're counting them together. The name comes from the Tenere region of the Sahara Desert, the toughest, most brutal stage of the Paris-Dakar Rally. That should tell you everything you need to know about what Yamaha intended. The original XT600Z dropped in 1983. Big 600 cubic centimeter single cylinder, 28-liter fuel tank, monoshock suspension, oil cooler, disc brake up front, and bodywork designed to survive getting thrown down a dune at 40 miles an hour. This wasn't a bike you rode to the desert. This was a bike you rode through the desert. It handled everything. Pavement, fine. Dirt roads, no problem. Rock-strewn trails in Morocco, bring it on. Production ended in 2016, and that was it. No more Tenere. Except Yamaha learned the lesson. They brought it back as the Tenere 700 with a twin-cylinder engine from the MT-07, and that bike's been a huge success. But the original 600 and the 660, those are the ones that proved the concept. Those are the ones that earned the name. Number 3, Yamaha RZV 500R. This is a bike that makes the RD350 look tame. The RZV 500R. also known as the RD500LC, depending on where you lived, but the RZV was the really special one. This was Yamaha's street-legal version of their YZR500 Grand Prix bike, a 500 cubic centimeter V4 two-stroke with YPVS on all 4 cylinders. Twin crank configuration, just like the factory racers. But here's what made the RZV different from the regular RD500. Handmade aluminum frame instead of mass-produced steel, higher spec suspension, more exotic components. This wasn't a parts bin special. This was Yamaha taking their GP technology and building a road bike that actually reflected it. The regular RD500 was already wild. The RZV 500R was unhinged. Iconic red on white paint scheme. Power delivery that would bite you if you weren't careful. This was a motorcycle that demanded respect, and nobody got one. Well, almost nobody. They weren't officially sold in the UK or the States. Limited production in other markets. When one does surface in America or England today, they sell for silly money, as the Brits say, because collectors know these are as close as you'll get to owning a piece of GP history. This bike was directly related to the machines Kenny Roberts, Eddie Lawson, and Wayne Rainey rode to world championships. That's not marketing talk, that's literal engineering lineage. But emissions killed it. The two-stroke era ended, and bikes like this went extinct. Parts became impossible to find. Maintenance became a nightmare. Insurance companies wouldn't touch them. The whole ecosystem collapsed. And that's tragic because the RZV500R represented the absolute peak of two-stroke road-going performance. Nothing before or since has matched it for that specific combination of race technology and street legality. It was the top of the mountain, and then the mountain disappeared. Number 2, Yamaha GTS 1000. This is the big one, the bike that still blows minds today. The Yamaha GTS 1000, 1993. Yamaha shows up with a sport tourer that has no front fork, none. Instead, it's got this single-sided swing arm up front, a completely unconventional suspension system called RADD, Rationally Advanced Design Development, and an aluminum frame they called the Omega Chassis concept. The idea was simple: separate steering from suspension. Traditional forks do both jobs, which causes compromises. The GTS split those functions completely. The result was suspension that worked independently of steering input, no brake dive, no fork flex, just pure predictable handling. And it wasn't like they skimped on the rest of the bike. The engine was the 1002 cubic centimeter inline 4 from the FZR 1000, making 100 horsepower, electronic fuel injection, which was still rare in 93, ABS brakes, a catalytic converter, 6-piston front brake caliper. This thing was loaded. Magazines tested it and came back shaking their heads. The handling was unlike anything they'd experienced. Stable, predictable, confidence-inspiring at speeds where other bikes got nervous. Cycle World said the front end offered unflappable control. Bike Magazine called it the coolest of rare motorcycles. So why didn't it sell? Because it was weird. It looked like something from a sci-fi movie. It was expensive, and people didn't trust it. Maintenance concerns, whether real or imagined, kept buyers away. Traditional forks had worked for 100 years. Why change now? Yamaha only built it for 3 years, 1993 to 1996, and that was it. The GTS 1000 disappeared, taking its radical front end with it. But here's what gets me. The concept was patented in 1985. Yamaha worked on this for 8 years before bringing it to market. They believed in it, they invested time, money, and engineering talent into proving this was the future, and the world rejected it. Not because it didn't work. It worked brilliantly, but because it was too different, too unfamiliar, too far ahead of what people were ready to accept. Today, when one shows up for sale, it goes for between $4,000 and $6,000. That's cheap for what you're getting. A piece of motorcycle history that tried to rewrite the rules and almost succeeded. The GTS 1000 was right. It was just 30 years too early. Number 1, Yamaha FZ07/MT07. And that brings us to number 1. Now, this might surprise you because the MT07 isn't forgotten in the same way as the others. It's still in production. You can go buy buy one tomorrow. But hear me out. The MT-07, or FZ-07 as it was originally called in the States, launched in 2015. 689 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled parallel twin, making 75 horsepower and 50 pound-feet of torque. Simple, straightforward, no fancy electronics, no traction control. No riding modes, just a motorcycle that worked. And it was brilliant, lightweight, flickable. That CP2 engine had character, smooth down low, punchy up top, with just enough vibration to remind you that you were riding a twin. It handled like a dream, affordable at under $8,000 new, reliable as gravity. This should have been the bike everyone talked about, but it wasn't. It got overshadowed by the bigger, flashier MT-09 and MT-10. It was too cheap to be taken seriously, too simple to generate hype, too honest in a world that wanted electronics and horsepower numbers. But the truth is, the MT-07 is the best middleweight motorcycle of the last 20 years, maybe ever. It does everything well: commuting, canyon carving, long tours, track days. It's a bike that fits into every part of your life without complaint, and Yamaha knew it. That CP2 engine now powers the XSR 700 Retro, the Tracer 700 Sport Tourer, and the Tenere 700 Adventure Bike. Three completely different motorcycles, all built on the foundation of the MT-07's engine. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens when you build something so fundamentally right that it works everywhere. Yet when people talk about great motorcycles, the MT-07 gets skipped. The MT-07 is what happens when a company forgets about ego and just builds the best motorcycle they can for the most people. No nonsense, no gimmicks, just a damn good bike at a damn good price. And that's why it's #1 on this list, because underestimating something this good is the biggest crime of all. Yamaha built the perfect middleweight and half the world shrugged. Don't make that mistake. In the end, we all know that Yamaha has always been willing to take risks, to build something different, to push boundaries even when the market wasn't asking for it. And sometimes that works. The R1 changed sport bikes forever. Sometimes it doesn't. The GTS 1000 disappeared into obscurity, but I'd rather ride for a company that takes swings and misses than one that plays it safe and builds boring motorcycles. Yamaha's catalog is filled with machines that tried to be something more, and even when they failed commercially, they succeeded in being memorable. If you've owned any of these bikes, drop a comment and tell us your story. And if you learned something today, hit that subscribe button. We've got more forgotten motorcycles coming your way.